Welcome everyone to the show. My name's John Pappas and you are now listening to InferentSwap.com. How about that music? That music is written by a friend of mine named Andy, who is an amazing songwriter. He's also part of Junction 715. And if you want to hear the rest of that album or the rest of these songs, go to Junction 715 on Apple Music or Spotify or whatever you listen to music and go start streaming that music because they are amazing. Guys, today's episode is brought to you by Hub Bootery, Barney's Hub Bootery in Crown Point, Indiana, 1198 North Main Street, right next to Jewel on the Strip. You can go there right now, and they're having a BOGO. So if you need boots, now's the time to go get boots right there in Crown Point at the top boot place in Northwest Indiana, and they're having a BOGO. So that's why you want to go there. You buy one, you get one half off. And let me tell you, they got an amazing and massive selection. So go there now and check it out. That's Barney's Hub Bootery, 1198 North Main Street. Hey, have you checked out our website, InferentSwap.com? That's where you can find all of these podcasts. If you're not listening to them on the Podbean app where we are located, but our podcast is everywhere where there are podcasts, and I want you to go there to the website though and check it out because we have a premium membership. And right now in that premium membership is my book, Screaming in the Wind, Is the Religion of Christianity Actually Keeping People from Christ? Now, why this is such an awesome deal is because for a premium membership, you pay $9.99 and you get all the resources from discipleship to the gospel that we put out. And right now, this last week, we literally just put out this book on audio, and it's the deluxe edition, which means after every single chapter, you get to hear more of me commentating on the book that I just read in order to clarify some of the things that you might be feeling, thinking, or going through as you're reading or listening to this audio book. This book is going to be out on Audible through Amazon in 30 days. So if you want to get it cheap and you want to get the resources we have here at InferentSwap, then go right now to InferentSwap.com, become a premium member, and you can start listening to this book right now with your premium membership. All right, that was a lot, right? But we are back, and guess what, guys? We are now into what I would say is our sixth amazing episode. And what we've been doing is been talking about God's judgment. And I just want to preface right up front, if you don't understand the good news of Jesus Christ, then no, it doesn't matter what you do religiously. It doesn't matter what your method is. If you don't understand it's the message and not the method, then really you're relying on the tokenism of religion to be and to go to bat for you. And what we find out in all these churches that I'm seeing, and there's some great ones out there, but one mistake that is clear across the board is we're always looking for a methodology and functionality when this whole thing is about what God has done on our behalf. So we really need to know the message. Now, I want you to think right now. Think about the people you know. Think about your Catholic upbringing. Think about your Christian upbringing. Think about your Baptist or Pentecostal upbringing. And each one of them, I believe that a lot of people, think about what you believe when it comes to God's judgment. And I'll tell you why this is so freaking important. Because if you believe it's righteousness versus reward, in other words, the good people go to heaven and the bad people go to hell. If that's what you believe, then you really have not understood the gospel and you have not really studied the Bible that much and what Jesus is actually saying to us. And that's why I'm so adamant on saying, we need to understand what God is doing on our behalf in order so we know what the good news that he actually brings us. What Jesus has done, as if you've been following along in these podcasts, is he's leveled out the playing field, as we're going to learn today again, and said all people are sinners. And the ones that he gets angry with are the ones that think they're righteous and want to show their scorecards, their spiritual resumes to God. And so this is sort of where we're at. So what Jesus does is he sort of reverses it and turns everything upside down. With the law, you guys, with the law, you get good and evil. This person did good, this person did bad. But with Jesus and his law, you stand before him and you go realize whoa, all of us have broken this law. So how is it that we can get into heaven, which is what we talked about last weekend with the rich young ruler? How can we have eternal life? And he says, with man, it's impossible. With God, it's possible. And that's because of Jesus. So today, and we're in our fifth part of the series, and this today is called Heaven's the Only Party in Town. So when Jesus is around, the bar is open. No Jesus, no bar. You get what I'm saying? That's why heaven's the only party in town. So we're going to talk about, and I'm going to put this up. If you're watching this, by the way, you can watch this on Facebook, or you can go to YouTube at Inference Swap, and you can now see this podcast live. All right, and go there and subscribe. All right, here we go. This is called The Laborers in the Vineyard. So what we're going to do is sort of go through this story, because Jesus is telling this story because he wants us to learn something. So Matthew 20:61-16, called The Laborers in the Vineyard. This is the story Jesus is telling to the people. So you tell me what you think. He says, the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a couple bucks a day, he sent them into his vineyard. And after going out about the third hour, in other words, like they started at 6 a.m. and now he's going back out at 9 a.m., he saw other people standing there in the marketplace, and he said, why don't you guys go work too, and I'll give you what's right. And so they went in. And so he was happy that they went into the vineyard and started working. But then he goes back out about the sixth hour, which is noon. Right? So they started at 6 a.m. He goes and grabs some people at 9 a.m. They come in and start working for him. And now he's at noon. And then he goes back out again in the ninth hour, which is 3 o'clock. And he did the same all the way up to the 11th hour. So up to this point, I want you to understand that this story is that the people that were working for this vineyard guy, the boss, started at 6 a.m., but then he saw that he needed more workers. So he went out at 9 a.m., every 3 hours, basically, all the way up to the 11th hour, which would be 6 p.m. Well, 5 p.m., you know what I mean? So, about the 11th hour, which is 5 p.m., he saw others standing there, and he said, why are you guys standing here all day? And they said, because no one's hired us. So he said, you guys go in too. So now he's hired people every hour of the day, basically, all the way up to when he closes, which is at 6 p.m. These guys right here get hired in at 5 p.m., all right? And so when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, he said, hey, call everybody up here. We're going to pay them. But here's what I want to do. The people that came on last, we're going to pay first, and the people that were here first will pay last. And when those hired about the 11th hour came, in other words, the ones that were hired last came, he gave them what was due to them. He paid them. Now, when those hired first came, they thought, well, they're going to receive more because they worked longer. But they also received a few bucks a day, the same as everybody else. And when they received their pay, they were basically pissed. It says, this pissed in biblical terms means they grumbled. Okay, that's what it says. They grumbled, which means they were pissed. And they were pissed at the master of the house saying, hey, the last worked only an hour or so. Some of them didn't even work that much, but you have made them equal to us, and we have borne the burden of the day in the scorching heat. But he replied to them, hey, I'm not doing you any wrong. Did you not agree for the same wages that I gave them? So take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge my generosity? So the last will be first and the first will be last. So there you go. There's the parable of the vineyards. You guys all get that? You understand all that? Yeah, some of these things can be crazy and a little bit weird, but here's the cool thing. We've been going through this, so we're going to know how to interpret it through the death and resurrection of Jesus. So what do we got to figure out here is, what is Jesus trying to share? What is he trying to communicate in this story? Now, a lot of you guys that are listening, you guys are hardworking guys out there that are listening to this podcast. So I want you to put it in your perspective. I want you to think about the modern factory upon which you work, or the place where you work and how it runs, right? And I want you to think about, like, all the work you do there, how hard you're working right now, but your boss decides to go out and hire more employees every hour. Now, it's going to be natural for those guys who have been there working all this time to go, wait a second, I wonder what they're making. Are they getting the same benefits as I'm getting? Do they get the same amount of vacation days? How are they going to make more than we are? So you see what I'm saying? So it's going to be real natural to ask these questions, especially in our day when we have all this equity and equality movements going on. And guess what? In the story of the vineyard, the laborers in the vineyard, that's exactly what they do. They were, quote, what they say? Pissed. Well, that word pissed means they had a little bit of grudge. They were mumbling, right? And so, in fairness, what happens is as these new workers or new employees come into this modern factory, think about it, your factory, what do? We begin to sort of bookkeep. I make this much. How much are they? I've worked this many hours. How many hours are they getting? I get this many vacations. How many vacation days? How many are they getting? They begin to tally up all these different things as they see all these workers coming in. Now, the boss, on the other hand, he is looking at it in a different way, in a completely different way. He thinks it would be fun to pay and to reward the employees that came in last first, and he wants to give these checks to them personally. So he calls them all up there. Now, I want you to think about this. You've been there all day. You guys that work hard every day, just think about this, because it's not funny, but it's sort of funny. All right. This new dude comes right out of high school. He got there at 5:45, and the work day ends at 6. And the boss comes in and he calls all of those guys, the guys with the blue hair, you know what I mean, with the cut jeans and the blue hair and the earrings and all that stuff. By the way, I have all that stuff. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. You got the new dude coming in here. He's been here 15 minutes while you've been working 12 hours. And the boss comes up and he hands him a check for a full day's pay. But when the guy sees it, when the new guy sees it, he smiles and he's like, oh my gosh, like, wow, I did not know this was the reward. And so he is legitimately happy. Come on, he's legitimately happy, but he doesn't even understand. So he doesn't really say much but thank you to the boss because he doesn't want to blow it. So what he wants to do is get that check and get it to the bank as fast as he can, right? And so among that group of guys, the guys that came in last, word gets around real quick. And so now they're all can't wait to be in line with the boss. This is one of the few times where you want to be in the line with the boss, right? Because you're going to get rewarded beyond what you deserve, right? That's sort of key. But the boss gives them all their pay and all these guys are happy. And now it's time to get the guys who have been working all day, the last now. The guys that were there first are now going to get paid last, and it's their turn to get paid. And so as they're watching all these other guys get paid, they begin to go, well, if these guys are getting this much, I've been here getting this much, and I'm going to make 10, 20 times more. But when they get up there, they get their checks and they open it up and they realize it's the same as everyone else's. And predictably, they're pissed. They get the union guy out and they're going to protest and they're going to strike, and they go up to the boss and they're going to lodge a huge complaint. But the boss doesn't care. He's like, hey, you agreed for a full day's wages and they agreed for a full day's wages. How did I do you wrong? Do I have to please you only in order to have this work? In other words, we all agreed on the wages paid and you all got what you agreed upon. I know that I did some things a little backwards today, but it's my money and I can do with it what? Well, they're befuddled by that because actually they did sign a union contract and everybody got what they got, right? Now, what's weird is the boss isn't asking for their approval. But what he does is he goes up to the union guys and he goes up to the guys that have been there all day and he goes, listen, Why don't you celebrate with me? I got beer and pizza in the back room, and we can have a party. So you can either celebrate with me the way I'm going to run this business, or you can pout and be angry and not go celebrate with me. Either way, this decision is mine and not yours. So you can choose to drink up and celebrate, or go to hell. That's basically what the story is saying, right? Isn't that crazy? That's what it is. So the Lord is showing us, as I mentioned before, is that the Lord's judgment is as much grace as it is judgment. It tells us that God's grace is about raising the dead and not about rewarding the rewardable. So again, he puts us on an equal playing field. But it's also about a judgment that falls hard on those who object to God's indiscriminate love for the whole world. They object to that arrangement. They've been doing, quote, good things longer than those new people that have not been doing, quote, good things. So they are pissed at God's arrangement. And this kind of story is repetitive. It's a repeated offer of God's indiscriminate love. And we see this repetition of this kind of story throughout the New Testament. You see, Jesus' grace is really a sinister grace, man, to those who view his judgment as the righteous get rewarded and the evil people get punished. So if you remember the story of the Pharisee and the tax collector, Jesus sees everyone as equal, and he ends up, he sees those who were treated first much happier than those who had been around for a long time. Did you notice in the story, hopefully this will make sense to you, did you notice in the story the smile on the face of the guy that was there at 5:45 p.m., the workday ended at 6, and he gets a full day's pay? He was devastatingly happy. But on the other end of it, just like the prodigal son, the older son refused to go into the celebration because his father gave him the good news that his son had returned. But to him, the good news was horribly bad news. So he really gets horribly bad news of the father's good news. You get what I'm saying? And so this is what this parable is saying to us. One of my favorite authors says, judgment rampant, therefore stands dexter on their device, judgment that lights into everyone with universal vindication and then sticks its tongue out at everybody who finds that it's more than he can take. So to just paraphrase, what that means is he's saying, like, these new guys that accepted and received the offer that the boss gave them in that last 15 minutes of work they did, it was great news for them. But to those that wanted vindication against guys like that, it was more than they can take. So what we have to acknowledge is in these parables of judgment, there is harsh judgment. When the boss firmly addresses those employees who have been there the longest, he scolds their evil eye. And what is he scolding? What does that mean? See, those guys are tallying up what they should get and what those people should get. And they're judging them based on their goodness or how hard they've worked in comparison to how the new people worked. And what they found is that when the new people got in, based on what the father, that was a slip there, but based on what the boss did, it was unacceptable to them. And they judged them and they threw a protest. But their evil eye was really the darkness of a bookkeeper's ink. You get what I'm saying? There were bean counters for spirituality. Their evil eye measured the darkness of their bookkeeper's ink, and they were taking note. They were taking note of how long, what they deserve in comparison to what I deserve, and they were just like bookkeepers, man. But that person cannot stand in the light of God's grace because Jesus has the final say, and he has the red ink, and that is that he has he has the book of life. And so in God's accounting world, Jesus took on all of the bookkeeping, all of the sin that separates man from God, and he writes our names in his book of life based in his blood. And so the only people that are punishable in the kingdom of God are those who are the bookkeepers, those who are keeping count. Isn't that amazing? One author says, the auditor before whom you must finally stand is the Lamb of God. And he has gone deaf, dumb, and blind to the cross. The last may be first and the first may be last, but that's only for the fun of making the point that everybody is on the payout queue and everybody gets full pay. Nobody's kicked out, and nobody gets kicked out who isn't already in. Remember? God doesn't exclude people. The only bruised backsides belong to those who insist on butting themselves into outer darkness. If the world was going to be saved by bookkeeping, we would have got Moses and Moses alone, but we have Jesus. And the law has made clear, has it not? In Romans 3:10, it says, no one is righteous, not one. In Psalms, it says, the fool says in his heart, there's no God. They are corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There is none who is good. None. Think about that. You righteous person, you religious person, there is no one that is good. You evil, vindictive, hater, none of us are good. The Lord looks down from heaven on the children of man to see if there are any who understand and who seek after God. They have all turned aside. Together they have all become corrupt. There is no one that is good, not even one. That's Psalms 14, 1-3. In Romans 3:9, what then? Are the Jews from which Jesus came better off? Not at all. For all have already charged that all, both Gentile and Jews, are under sin. See, this is another thing where God gets to reward as God chooses, and he's not going, you're in or you're out. He's saying, I want everybody to be in, and because I've done what I've done, we all should be rejoicing. Doesn't matter when they get in. So whether you're Paul, who gets his head chopped off for the gospel, or you're sitting there watching Jesus and the thief on the cross says, you don't deserve to be here, but I do. Would you let me into your paradise? And Jesus says, yes. It's not about what Paul did versus what that guy on the cross did. It's about what Jesus has done. And what Jesus has done is caused God to give up the salvation by the books. God gave up on salvation by the books. Repeat after me. God gave up salvation by the books. He canceled everybody's records. And believe me, we all have them. And he did it by the death of Jesus. And he rewards us all equally and fully with being a new creation in Christ through his resurrection. So evil cannot be taken away from this world by reward and punishment. And I wish that would be something that this world would understand, but they look to politics to justify, to equify, and get equality. And it can't. But evil can't be taken from this world by reward and punishment. This just means that all would perish then. And God would be seen as some kind of scapegoat, which is basically, because we have this reward versus punishment idea of God's judgment, is how many people look at God. Well, I'm in, you're out, blah, blah, blah. But the only way to solve the problem of evil was for Jesus to do exactly what he did, to take the world by taking it into himself, down the forgottery of Jesus' dead human mind, and close the books on it forever. The kingdom of heaven is for everybody. Hell is reserved only for the idiots who insist on keeping non-existent records in their heads. Isn't that crazy? Not exactly what we're taught in Sunday school, right? So I want to give you one last image, and it's sort of the idea of what this podcast is named, Heaven's the Only Party in Town. There's a place called Shelter Island, and they had this really odd local custom. And every Friday, and this is the custom, every Friday about 5 minutes before 5, a siren would go off. And so for those who had vacation there, they never understood what this meant or where it came from, but you could count on it. Every single Friday at 5 minutes to 5, the sirens from not the police station, from the fire department would go off. Now, many of us thought that, we've heard those being checked at noon, but this was 5 to 5. So he began to ask around, and he couldn't find anybody that could understand what this meant, but they kept doing it every single week. So one person went into this bar and he saw this old guy, a real old guy, about 80 years old, and he began to talk to him. And the guy told him that he used to work at that firehouse when the tradition started. And so he told us that him and his crew understood the grind of each work week and the drudgery of it, and how it can be it just is unrelenting. So rather than just letting things be, what they decided all these, like 70 years ago, 60 years ago, that every Friday, 5 minutes before 5, at the end of the work week, they would blow their siren to announce that the work week is over and it was time to go and have a beer and have a party. So they would welcome in the weekend. And so basically when you hear that siren, it represented Miller time on Shelter Island. You see, heaven is when all the rednecks and all the wood butchers and all the plumbers who never showed up at our little religious services, and all the losers who never got anything right, and all the winners who just gave up on winning, simply waltz up to the bar of judgment with full pay envelopes and get down to some serious drinking that makes the new creation go round. It's a bash that has happened because it's finished. It's a bash that insists on happening, and it's one that's happening right now. How about that? Now, is that not good news? All right, well, I'm going to just shut up. So, what do we have? Heaven is Miller time for those who will accept the acceptance of the Lord, but it's a bad, bad thing for those who refuse the acceptance of the Lord. Isn't that crazy? I'd rather be in heaven, which is the only good party in town, and I'd rather be in Miller time than not. How about you? All right, guys, I will see you next week. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please do me a favor and subscribe on your podcast or wherever you're at. If you're watching this live, subscribe on YouTube or on Facebook. And if you like the music that you're hearing in the background, go to Junction 715 and put it on your podcasting app. It's great music. They just released a new song, so go check it out. I love you guys, and I will see you next week, where we will be having another amazing announcement coming your way. So this is John for Infant Swap signing out. I will see you next week. Bye-bye, guys.
Oh Lord, here we go again. Wishing I was back where I began. Back when I had a peace of mind. Give me back to a simple kind of life. I know I fought a good fight against my self-foolish pride. Take shot just to feel the burn. Teach my soul to live better. I've been feeling like dust in the wind, drinking from the bottle that's half full of sin, looking up when I should look within, chasing angels, demons won't let me in. I've been feeling like let me in. Won't let me in. No salvation, preservation, work towards condemnation, need redemption.